You are standing at a crossroads in your twin flame journey, a place where everything feels still, suspended, almost eerily quiet. You've waited, you've hoped, you've surrendered more times than you can count, yet nothing seems to move. You question whether destiny has forgotten you, whether the masculine will ever take the first step, whether you are meant to do something more, or simply let go. This is where the feminine begins to awaken into her deepest realization, the moment she sees that union is not sparked by his return, but by her remembrance of who she truly is. You feel it, don't you? That subtle pull inside your chest urging you to rise, that quiet knowing whispering that something is shifting beneath the surface. This confusion, this silence, this pressure within your heart, this is the threshold of truth. In today's transmission, we are going to walk directly into this mystery. We will uncover why the feminine is the one who moves first, not through action, chasing, or proving, but through embodiment. We will explore how your self-choice becomes the catalyst for union, how your energy sets the field before the masculine ever steps forward, and why silence, your silence is sometimes the loudest message the soul can send. Together, we will decode the energetic mechanics of this stage, why waiting collapses the timeline, why choosing yourself fractures old patterns, why the moment you remember your divinity, he feels the pull in his bones. This video will not just explain your experience, it will clarify it, affirm it, and expand it. By the end of this transmission, you will no longer question your role, your power, or your place in this journey. You will understand why union does not begin when he moves, but when you do energetically, spiritually, sovereignly. You will walk away with a deeper sense of trust, a renewed inner certainty, and a fearless recognition of who you are in this divine partnership. Because union is not the moment he comes home. Union begins the moment you come home to yourself. And once that remembrance ignites, everything that was stagnant begins to move. Number 1. The feminine sets the frequency. There comes a moment in the twin flame journey when everything that once felt reactive, the running, the chasing, the longing, the waiting, begins to dissolve under its own exhaustion. The feminine reaches a deep inner breaking point, not from weakness, but from remembrance. She begins to realize, often after lifetimes of energetic patterns, that union is not sparked by pursuit. It is not born from trying harder, loving more loudly, or holding hope with white-knuckled desperation. The connection does not move forward because she pushes, it moves because she becomes. This is the pivotal turning point where awareness replaces effort, where silence becomes more powerful than words, and where surrender is no longer collapse but awakening. The feminine is not meant to chase. She is not meant to pull two souls across the finish line through force or longing. Instead, she is the one who holds the ancient blueprint, the frequency of union itself. Because of this, the masculine cannot initiate the final activation. His movement is not the spark, it is the echo. His action is not the origin, it is the response. This is where many divine feminines struggle. For lifetimes, she has been conditioned to act, to reach, to fix, to prove her worthiness of love. She has been taught that connection equals pursuit, that longing equals devotion, that waiting equals faith. Yet in the twin flame journey, the opposite is true. The soul of the masculine awakens not when she tries to bring him closer, but when she stops needing him to close the distance at all. His transformation does not arrive through her movement, but through her stillness. Because it is her embodiment, not her effort, that activates him. Her nervous system becomes the tuning fork. Her self-trust becomes the magnet. Her alignment becomes the field he cannot ignore. The divine feminine carries the codes of union in her body. She does not have to earn them, learn them, or chase them. She is them. She holds the intuitive map, the emotional compass, and the spiritual circuitry that reconnect the soul pair. She is the vessel through which remembrance returns, not only for herself but for both halves of the connection. Her awakening is not singular, it is mirrored through him. When she stops reaching outward for validation, for reassurance, for proof that the connection is real, something alchemical happens. The energy reverses direction. Instead of pushing, she draws. Instead of chasing, she attracts. Instead of leaking energy toward him, she becomes a magnetic core, that calls him forward through resonance rather than expectation. And this is where the profound truth emerges. Union is not achieved by doing. Union is activated by being. When the feminine holds love instead of reaching for it, when she embodies worthiness instead of searching for it, she becomes the living vibration of union itself. She becomes the field in which reunion is possible. She no longer asks for love to return. She is the frequency of love returning. This shift is not loud, it is not dramatic. It does not require messages, confessions, or external proof. It happens quietly, internally, in the unseen halls of the soul, where energy speaks more loudly than language ever could. The masculine feels her shift before she speaks it. He senses her alignment before she announces it. Her energy whispers what her hands once tried to reach for, and he responds not because she demands movement, but because his soul can finally feel safety within hers. She becomes the lighthouse instead of the swimmer, the center instead of the seeker, the presence instead of the pursuit. In this state, the feminine transforms from longing into embodiment. The masculine no longer runs from intensity, he gravitates toward it. He no longer hides from truth, he begins to remember it. Because when she anchors in love, peace, and sovereignty, she opens the energetic doorway the masculine must walk through on his own. She does not drag him, she does not convince him. She simply stands in her frequency, and the path reveals itself. This is the sacred architecture of union. She sets the tone. He responds to the music. The feminine does not ignite reunion through action, she ignites it through alignment. Not by holding on, but by holding herself. Not by striving, but by knowing. Not by reaching outward, but by turning inward and remembering that she is, and always has been, the frequency that calls the connection home. When she embodies love, not longing, she becomes the reunion she once waited for. Before we move into the next stage of this journey, pause with this truth for a moment. Truly let it settle in your heart, rather than just pass through your mind. Have you reached this point yet? The point where effort gives way to embodiment, where longing softens into presence, where you no longer try to carry both souls but instead learn to stand fully in your own? Your answer matters, because your awareness is the key that unlocks everything that follows. If this message resonates with your experience, or even challenges you in a way that feels uncomfortable but true, take a moment to reflect and share it below. Tell me what stage you feel you are currently standing in, or if you're not sure, simply type, "I am becoming the frequency," to anchor this shift into your field. Your voice, your reflection, and your energy are part of the collective awakening we are exploring together. Now that the foundation has been set, let us move into the next chapter of this sacred unfolding. Number 2. Why the feminine must move first. There is a moment in the twin flame journey when the feminine realizes that movement does not come through chasing, persuading, or waiting for the divine masculine to lead. Her movement is inward, not outward. She advances not by running toward union, but by remembering who she truly is beneath fear, attachment, and longing. Her power is not in effort, but in embodiment, in becoming the frequency of love itself, rather than seeking love outside of her. She does not shift reality through force. She shifts it through presence, through inner alignment, through the quiet certainty that she is already whole. The world once taught her to reach outward, to prove her worth, to go after what she desires, to earn love through action and devotion. But in the final stage of this journey, she learns a truth that rewrites the entire script. She does not need to pursue union, because union already lives within her. What she is seeking is not outside of her grasp. It exists in her emotional field, her intuition, her heart. When she stops reaching outward and begins to source love from her own essence, something extraordinary begins to happen. The field shifts, the energy reorganizes. The masculine begins to feel what she anchors. The divine masculine is not slow because he is unaware. He is slow because he was raised to suppress awareness. Conditioned to mistrust softness, taught to numb emotion, rewarded for logic over intuition, he learned to build walls where she learned to feel. She moves first not because she is stronger, but because she was always closer to soul. She is water, intuitive and flowing, while he is fire, powerful, but in need of direction, oxygen, and spark. When she chooses to embody love instead of seeking it, she becomes the flame he must eventually turn toward. Her movement is invisible to the outside world, yet unmistakably powerful in spirit. It is her courage to sit with her longing instead of collapsing into it, her willingness to feel deeply without drowning, her ability to stay soft in a world that taught her to become hard. The feminine moves first the moment she stops performing love and starts emanating love, when she honors her intuition instead of abandoning it, when she trusts the connection without needing proof from his actions, when she no longer shapes herself around his unavailability, but shapes her energy around her own birthright truth, self-love, sovereignty. And in that shift, something ancient stirs within the masculine. Because he has spent years, perhaps lifetimes, turning away from his own heart, it is her embodiment that becomes the mirror he can no longer ignore. Not her words, not her effort, not her attempts to convince him. His awakening is not a response to pursuit, it is a response to resonance. When she stands in her truth fully, without wavering for approval or outcome, she becomes the frequency of remembrance. She becomes the signal his soul has been searching for beneath the noise of conditioning and fear. She does not move first to carry both roles, nor to chase union into existence. She moves first because she is the only one untethered enough to feel the field clearly. She senses what the mind cannot rationalize, what logic cannot decode. Her body knows, her heart knows. And when she honors that knowing, she becomes lighthouse instead of seeker. She becomes gravitational instead of grasping. She becomes the invitation his soul cannot resist. This does not mean she forces his awakening. She could chase him for years and get nowhere, because movement fueled by fear only reinforces separation. The feminine activates union not by running toward him, but by returning home to herself, by choosing alignment over attachment, by holding love steady even when there is silence, distance, or uncertainty. When she stops performing the connection and simply is the connection, he feels it in a way the mind cannot intellectualize. Her truth vibrates through the unseen channels of the soul. He begins to sense her energy even when they are not speaking. He dreams of her without trying. He feels a pull he cannot explain, a remembering he cannot rationalize. Her embodiment becomes the spark that touches the place in him he has long buried, the place where his soul still remembers her. In time, he realizes the echo he hears is not her calling out for him. It is her calling herself home. She awakens him not by pursuit, but by presence, by standing so firmly in her truth that he can no longer deny his own. She becomes undeniable. The connection becomes undeniable. He can run from her words, but he cannot run from resonance. He can avoid her attempts, but not his own inner recognition. Her alignment becomes the doorway through which he must eventually walk. This is why the feminine moves first, not outward, but inward, not to force union, but to anchor it, not to chase, but to remember. Because when she remembers who she is, he must eventually remember too. Number 3. Stillness, the most powerful movement. There comes a moment when the divine feminine realizes that leading is not about doing more, pushing harder, or proving anything to the masculine or to the universe. Movement, in its highest form, is not motion. It is not effort, it is not persuasion, and it is not pursuit. In this stage, she learns that the most powerful movement she can ever make is into stillness, into the quiet, sovereign space where she no longer reaches outward for confirmation, reassurance, or response. She learns that her first step forward is not a step at all. It is a soft, settling back into herself. To move first in union does not mean to act. It means to unact, to soften instead of chase, to breathe instead of demand, to trust instead of seek. Instead of trying to pull him closer, she becomes a field of resonance he gravitates toward naturally, like a river returning to the sea. She understands now that stillness is not passivity, it is power in its most concentrated form. True movement is not what the eyes see, but what the soul feels. In stillness, the feminine no longer performs love, she becomes it. She holds the connection not by effort, but by presence. She no longer tries to hold him, fix the dynamic, or shape the outcome. She simply rests in her knowing. What is true does not require convincing. What is sacred does not require chasing. What is destined does not need to be forced. In that realization, something inside her finally exhales. Stillness is alive. It is not empty, it is full of clarity, full of awareness, full of unspoken truth. It is here that her energy expands without moving, radiating outward not as longing, but as certainty. Stillness is magnetic because it is grounded, it is receptive, it is sovereign. It does not plead for love, it attracts love. It does not stretch toward union, it draws union in like a tide returning home. And in that shift, the old dynamic, the runner and the chaser, dissolves. Not through confrontation, but through neutrality. When there is no longer a chase, there is nothing to run from. When she is no longer pursuing him, his avoidance loses meaning. The masculine cannot outrun what is not following. He cannot escape what is not chasing. Stillness collapses the cycle, not by fighting it, but by no longer feeding it. At first, he may interpret silence as space, as freedom, as distance. But with time, and often sooner than expected, that silence becomes something else entirely. Her stillness begins to vibrate. It becomes a frequency, a presence, a truth that he can feel without her saying a single word. Because this time, her silence does not mean abandonment, it means embodiment. It means she no longer needs to reach outward to feel connected. She is connected by essence alone. When her energy no longer stretches toward him, he begins to feel the absence of pursuit, not as relief, but as clarity. The silence that once comforted him now calls him. The space he once hid inside now becomes the space where he hears his own soul speak. Her stillness becomes the mirror he cannot look away from, the invitation he cannot logically explain, the gravitational pull he can no longer ignore. Stillness is not the end of connection, it is the beginning of true union. Because when a woman no longer moves from fear, attachment, or urgency, she moves from power. And power does not chase, power calls. Her stillness is not a retreat, it is an arrival, a remembering, a declaration without words. I am here, I am whole, I do not need to pursue what is already mine. And when she stands in that inner quiet so fully, so peacefully, so truthfully, he feels it. He feels the reality of the bond, not through her effort, but through her presence. Not through her voice, but through her silence. Stillness is the moment the journey turns. Imagine a feminine energy who once texted, checked signs, waited for replies, refreshed messages late into the night. Her heart reached outward constantly, hoping, asking, holding the connection for both of them. Then one day, not out of anger but out of clarity, she gently turned her energy back inward. She stopped checking her phone, not because she no longer cared, but because she finally cared for herself more. She began waking up with peace instead of urgency, choosing to meditate instead of chase, choosing to nourish her body instead of monitor his movements. And something surprising happened in the quiet she created. His intuition stirred, memories surfaced, dreams returned. He felt her presence more loudly without a single word spoken than he ever did through 100 messages. Her stillness became the signal his soul could finally hear. Not absence, but resonance. Not distance, but truth. This is the kind of movement that cannot be seen, only felt. Number 4. Choosing herself. The real turning point. The true breakthrough in the twin flame journey does not happen in the moment she finally convinces him to choose her. It does not unfold through persuasion, effort, sacrifice, or hope that he will awaken. The turning point arrives quietly, almost invisibly, when she finally chooses herself not as a performance, not as a strategy to trigger his return, but as a genuine act of remembrance. She remembers her worth. She remembers her divinity. She remembers that love cannot be earned, only embodied. This is the moment the entire path tilts. This is the moment everything changes. Choosing herself is not closure in the way the mind defines it. It is not the ending of a story, not a resignation, not the sealing of a wound. It is sovereignty. It is the reclamation of energy that was once scattered into longing, expectation, and imbalance. It is the moment she stops outsourcing her emotional stability to his actions or his absence. She no longer waits for validation. She no longer measures her worth by whether or not he chooses her. She turns inward, and inside that turning is where power returns. She begins to understand her heart differently. She no longer sacrifices her peace to hold space for a connection that is not yet ready to land. She no longer pours endlessly into an energetic well that gives nothing back. She does not chase, try to prove, or stretch herself thin in the name of love. Instead, she tends to her inner world, her body, her grounding, her breath. She learns to fill herself so completely that longing dissolves into presence. She gives without depletion, receives without guilt, and meets herself as the home she once sought in another. This shift is not loud. It does not announce itself in grand decisions or dramatic declarations. It lives in quieter forms, in boundaries, in self-honoring, in the gentle refusal to shrink. She says without speaking a single word, "I am whole already. I do not wait for completion. I embody it." Her life begins to reflect this truth. She chooses peace over longing, clarity over confusion, embodiment over expectation. Instead of clinging to possibility, she roots herself in reality, a reality where she is not half of anything. She is full, radiant, magnetic, sovereign. She becomes a woman who does not wait for love to arrive. She is love in motion. She does not dim herself to be wanted. She shines, and what cannot meet her in that light falls away naturally. And in this shift, something unmistakable happens. The masculine feels the change in his soul. He may not understand it logically, but he feels the ground move beneath him. The energetic cord vibrates differently, no longer fueled by longing, but by truth. She is no longer the one anchored in waiting. She is now the one anchored in knowing. Her frequency no longer reaches outward, it expands from within, powerful enough to awaken remembrance in him, without effort, without words, without pursuit. When she chooses herself, she becomes the field of union rather than the seeker of it. She stops searching for home in him because she has already found it in herself. And from that moment onward, the story is no longer about whether he will choose her. It becomes a story of whether he can rise to meet the version of her who finally remembers who she is. She has not left love behind. She has stepped into the truth of it. And in that truth, everything begins. Number 5. The runner and the chaser, a cycle built from fear. For a long time, this connection unfolded like a quiet storm repeating itself. He ran and she chased. He pulled away and she reached forward. He hid inside silence and she searched for answers. It became a rhythm neither of them consciously agreed to, yet both participated in as if bound by instinct. It was never indifference, it was fear, in both of them, in different forms, expressed through opposite behaviors, but rooted in the same wound. His fear was intensity, the unbearable truth of feeling something so real it exposed every wall he'd built around himself. To love her meant to be seen, to be vulnerable, to surrender control. His nervous system resisted that level of truth, so his instinct was to run. Distance felt safer than closeness. Silence felt easier than honesty. He withdrew not because he didn't care, but because caring threatened everything he thought he knew about himself. Her fear, however, was separation. The ache of losing him felt heavier than the pain of waiting, so she chased. She ran toward connection with a heart wide open, believing closeness could be earned, fixed, or held together if she tried hard enough. She reached while he retreated. She pursued the bond as if love needed effort to survive. She feared abandonment more than exhaustion, so giving more felt like devotion instead of depletion. Two souls, both afraid, one of being consumed, one of being forgotten. Yet no amount of chasing ever brought true closeness, and no amount of running ever brought him peace. The chasing fed his fear, the running fed hers. Both kept them locked in a loop, longing, distance, return, separation, repeat. A cycle built not from lack of love, but from unconscious survival patterns. One pushed, one pulled. One hid, one searched. But neither healed until the cycle breaks. The cycle only ends when she stops chasing, not out of punishment or pride, but from awareness. When she finally returns her energy to herself, not in anger but in self-honoring, something profound happens. She is no longer trying to hold what is not yet ready. She is no longer pouring life into a future that exists only in longing. She steps out of the pattern, and patterns cannot continue without participation. She withdraws not from love, but from fear. She becomes still, anchored, whole. Because she is the anchor of the connection. She always was. Not because she was meant to carry the weight alone, but because the feminine holds the energetic ground of union. When she pulls her energy back into herself, her heart, her healing, her inner fullness, he is no longer running from her. He is left alone with the one thing he has been running from the entire time, his own soul. And this is where transformation begins. Separation becomes a mirror, silence becomes a teacher, distance becomes the space where his internal truth has nowhere left to hide. Without her chasing, he must face the intensity he once escaped. He must meet the emotion instead of outrunning it. He must feel what he avoided, remember what he tried to forget, and confront the love he could not extinguish. This moment, the pause where she no longer runs toward him and he can no longer run away, holds the potential to rewrite everything. The runner must meet himself. The chaser must meet her own wholeness. Only then can two become one without fear. Think of a connection where she always held the door open, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. She waited for messages that arrived late and thin, replied instantly to breadcrumbs, forgave distance even when it hurt. Every time he ran, she followed the thread back to him, believing love required effort to be real. But the day she chose herself, everything shifted. Instead of refreshing her phone, she refreshed her soul. She enrolled in a class she'd postponed for months, redecorated her room with soft lights and new plants, began journaling her desires, not as wishes but as truths already forming. She no longer molded herself to be chosen, she became someone who chooses herself daily. And as she bloomed inward, he felt the absence of her pursuit, like a door closing gently, not in anger but in evolution. The space she left was not punishment, it was invitation. An invitation for him to meet himself at the level she now lived. Number 6. Silence as power, instead of pain. Silence used to feel like abandonment. It felt like an unanswered question, a hollow space that echoed with longing, confusion, and ache. Every moment without response felt like rejection, like a door closing quietly on a love you could not stop feeling. For so long, silence carried the weight of loss, a space where the heart waited, hoping, stretching towards something it could no longer hold. But then something shifted. What once felt like emptiness became embodiment. Silence transformed into alignment instead of ache. This silence is no longer born from fear, nor from emotional withdrawal, nor from the panic of losing connection. It is a silence rooted in truth, a silence that does not tremble, does not chase, does not plead. It is steady, grounded, sovereign. It is the kind of quiet that comes when she finally remembers her worth, not through words, but through being. In this stage, she realizes she does not need to speak to be felt. She does not need to explain to be understood. Her presence, even in absence, carries its own undeniable frequency. She no longer fills the void with overgiving, no longer sends messages to prove love or worth, no longer tries to hold together what was always meant to align itself. Instead, she lets her stillness speak. And this stillness is not passive, it is powerful. Her silence becomes a mirror he cannot look away from. It reflects everything she once gave so freely, the emotional labor, the nurturing, the softness, the open-door heart that waited. Now, without her effort, without her energy reaching outward, the imbalance becomes visible. What once felt subtle becomes unmistakably clear. Where she used to fill space, she now allows space to exist. And that space speaks louder than any declaration she could have made. That silence becomes a frequency, a soundless resonance, and it rings inside him much louder than her words ever did. Because when she stops speaking, he finally hears her. When she stops reaching, he finally feels the absence of her touch. When she stops giving, he finally feels what it was to be given to. He hears what she no longer says, all the love she once poured into him effortlessly, now resting inside her, no longer leaking outward. He feels what she no longer gives, the emotional warmth, the affirming presence, the energy that once wrapped him like a sanctuary. Without it, something within him shifts. The silence exposes what he ran from, resisted, or minimized. It brings him face to face with what he didn't realize he relied on until it was no longer there. The absence becomes louder than the presence ever was, not because she has turned away in anger, not because she stopped caring, but because she stands within herself so clearly, so wholly, that he must now confront what he once avoided. Her silence is not disappearance. It is self-respect. It is not absence. It is boundary. It is not withdrawal. It is sovereignty. In this moment of stillness, she is no longer the one trying to bridge the gap. She is no longer carrying both souls through effort, devotion, or hope. She is not waiting for confirmation, attention, or apology. Instead, she has found something deeper, a home within herself, a truth that does not need validating, a love that does not require performance to be real. And in this power, he begins to feel the very thing he once ignored. The silence becomes a catalyst, a turning point, a reckoning. Because when she stands strong in her inner world, he is left alone with his own. He must feel his emotions instead of avoiding them. He must witness the space she once softened. He must acknowledge the loss of what he took for granted. Silence becomes the bridge he must now cross, the mirror he must face, the energy that guides him not through force, but through reflection. What she no longer gives becomes the very thing he cannot escape. What she no longer explains becomes the lesson he must learn. Her silence becomes his awakening. And so, silence, once pain, becomes power. It is the moment she realizes she has nothing left to prove. The moment her worth is felt rather than spoken. The moment her presence expands, even in absence. The silence is not the end. It is the recalibration, the shift from longing to embodiment, from attachment to self-authority, from waiting to becoming. And through that shift, he finally sees her. Not through words, but through the space where words no longer need to exist. Not through effort, but through the absence that reveals what effort once held. Silence becomes the most powerful language of all. Number 7. Sovereignty, the feminine's final initiation. Sovereignty is often misunderstood. Many assume it means distance, detachment, or coldness, but true sovereignty is not separation, it is radiance. It is the luminous glow of a woman who remembers she is whole, who no longer seeks her reflection in another, but recognizes it first within herself. Sovereignty is the state in which she is no longer ruled by longing, expectation, or waiting. Instead, she becomes the source, the origin of her own light. When she stands in fullness rather than longing, everything changes. She no longer looks toward him for completion, reassurance, or direction. She no longer measures her worth by his presence or absence. She begins to anchor into something far deeper, her own soul. She becomes rooted in her inner knowing. Her heart becomes steady, and her energy begins to rise rather than seek. It is a shift so subtle yet so powerful that the entire dynamic of the connection rearranges itself. She shines rather than reaches. She expands rather than grasps. She embodies rather than waits. And in that moment, the masculine sees her differently. He no longer sees a woman who chases, bends, or dreams of being chosen. He sees a woman who chooses herself. A woman who stands in her power without demanding, without controlling, without losing softness. Sovereignty does not harden her, it liberates her. She becomes a mirror he cannot look away from, reflecting his own truth, his own soul, his own destiny. Her presence becomes undeniable. Her energy becomes unmistakable. He sees destiny, not distance. He sees alignment, not abandonment. He feels a pull that is no longer fueled by craving, but by truth. Because when the feminine rises into sovereignty, she no longer dims herself to be chosen. She no longer compresses her light to be accepted, loved, or validated. She stops shrinking to fit into spaces too small for her spirit. Instead, she expands into the fullness of who she is. She becomes her own lighthouse, steady, bright, magnetic. She rises, and in rising, she becomes an invitation. Not an invitation for him to rescue her, possess her, or complete her, but an invitation for him to rise as well. Her sovereignty calls his soul forward. It holds a frequency he cannot ignore. It challenges him to confront his fears, dissolve his illusions, and step into the truth he has been avoiding. She becomes the catalyst, not by effort, but by embodiment. Her sovereignty breaks illusion and awakens truth. It peels away fear, separation, ego, and doubt. It clarifies what was once blurred and amplifies what was once subtle. This is the final initiation of the feminine, not a test of endurance, but a return to essence. A woman in sovereignty does not wait for love, she becomes it. She does not chase union, she radiates it. She does not seek validation, she breathes truth. And in that state, union becomes inevitable, not because she chased it, but because she embodied it. She stands, she shines, she remembers, and in her remembrance, he remembers too. Number 8. Union begins with her. Union is not a prize awarded for patience. It is not something that arrives simply because she endured the waiting, carried the pain, or held space through silence. Union is not the reward, union is the reflection. It is the natural result of alignment. It begins quietly, internally, in the moment she stops abandoning herself for love. When she stops reaching outward and turns inward, when the love she spent pouring into another finally returns home to her own heart. This is where union truly begins. The shift is subtle, yet seismic. She no longer seeks completion outside of herself. She becomes completion. She no longer hopes someone else will choose her. She chooses her own soul without hesitation. She realizes that connection does not require pursuit, it requires presence. And in this realization, something opens, a gateway, a frequency, a remembering. He will move. He will rise. He will return. But not because she pulled him, begged, proved her worth, or struggled to hold the connection together. His movement is not born of her longing, it is born of her liberation. He rises because she no longer needs him to rise. He returns not as the missing piece, but as the reflection of the wholeness she already embodies. The feminine stops being the doorway, the entry point where he comes and goes. She becomes the temple, the sanctuary, the place of truth, stillness, and remembrance. She no longer hosts union. She is union. Her energy becomes the vibration of home, not a place he visits, but a frequency he cannot forget. She becomes the connection itself, the river and the current, the flame and the warmth, the union and the invitation. She no longer waits for him to see it, she becomes what must be seen. Because the feminine does not chase union, she becomes union. And the masculine remembers through her, through the frequency she anchors, the embodiment she radiates, the self-love she refuses to abandon. She becomes the lighthouse in the dark, the grounding pulse he finds in every breath, the mirror that shows him his own soul when he is ready to look, not through effort, but through essence. Union is not a destination, it is a state of being. A woman aligned with herself cannot be separated from her twin flame, not truly, not energetically, not spiritually. Her frequency calls him even in silence. Her wholeness awakens his. Her embodiment activates remembrance in him like a spark seeking ignition. Union becomes inevitable not through force, but through resonance. She stops asking, "When will he return?" and begins living as if he already has within her. She stops asking, "When will union happen?" and begins embodying union now. In every breath, every boundary, every moment, she honors her worth. This is where the journey turns, where longing dissolves into knowing, where waiting dissolves into becoming, where two souls no longer meet through pain, but through recognition. Union begins not with his action, but with her alignment, not with his return, but with her remembrance, not with chasing love, but with becoming love. And when she becomes union, he no longer searches, he remembers. At the end of every twin flame journey, no matter how chaotic, quiet, confusing, or beautifully unbearable it may have been, one core truth remains immovable, like the spine of destiny itself. Union does not begin with reunion, it begins with remembrance. It begins the moment the divine feminine no longer looks outward to be chosen, validated, or claimed, but turns inward and chooses herself without hesitation. This self-choice is not abandonment, not detachment, not separation. It is embodiment. It is wholeness, returning to itself. It is the soul standing firm in its own light for the very first time. Because every time she steps into sovereignty, consciously or silently, the entire energetic field rearranges. Every time she releases the impulse to reach, explain, or convince, the connection breathes. Every time she stops running toward him and stands still in her truth, he can finally feel the pull of what was always there, not as pressure, not as expectation, but as clarity. The dynamic that was once built on longing, waiting, and imbalance dissolves like dawn swallowing night. She stops holding space for absence. She becomes presence itself. And when she becomes whole, something subtle yet seismic happens. The masculine no longer gravitates toward potential, he responds to presence. He no longer feels drawn to the fantasy of what could be someday, he is magnetized by the certainty of what is. He no longer reaches for what is missing, he recognizes what is embodied. It is the moment he feels her not as longing, but as alignment, not as hope, but as truth, not as distance, but as home. Because union begins with her not in waiting, not in yearning, not in sacrifice, but in memory, in the remembrance of who she has always been, in the choosing of herself deeply, fiercely, softly, without apology. When she stands in that knowing, she does not chase union, she becomes it. The reunion does not arrive from outside, it ignites from within. So, beloved soul, breathe into this with honesty and tenderness, and ask yourself, am I living as the one who waits, or as the one who already knows? One path leads to longing. The other leads to embodiment, to frequency, to inevitability. And the moment you choose the latter, union does not move toward you slowly, it begins instantly, quietly, powerfully. From within you, not beyond you. If these words speak to your spirit, if you can feel something shifting in your heart even now, I invite you to anchor it into the physical with your voice. Comment below with the sacred affirmation, union begins with me. Let this sentence not just be typed, let it be lived. And as you do, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. And stay with us for the next message below on your screen, because you are not just approaching union, you are already standing inside the beginning of it.